This is The Competitive Edge with Ari Meisel. Welcome to The Competitive Edge. My name is Scott Britton, and I'm here to help you answer a question that we all have. How can I get an edge in my business and life? Each week, we're going to uncover how some of the most successful and inspiring entrepreneurs, entertainers, and thought leaders get an edge, so you too can reach your full potential. Thanks for tuning in today. Now let's get started. Hey, Scott Britton here, and welcome to another episode of The Competitive Edge. Have you ever found anyone that just kept popping up online everywhere you are and wondered, who the heck is this guy? Well, today's guest was one of those people for me at one point. When I was starting out teaching on Skillshare and getting involved in blogging, I kept seeing this guy come up over and over again. My friends were talking about him, they were tweeting about him, they were going to his class, they were doing all of these things that made me really interested to learn a little bit more about this person's story and why everyone was telling me they were so awesome. Well, I got to know him and I realized why really quickly. And today I'm so excited to bring you Ari Meisel, the founder of LessDoing.com. Before Less Doing, Ari did something pretty amazing. He cured himself from Crohn's disease, which, if you didn't know, is an incurable disease. And he did it using the framework that we're going to talk about today, and that is also the name of his business and new book, Less Doing. So this interview is just jam-packed with awesome information like how to make your life easier, quick wins to get more time back, virtual assistants, and how he hacked the system to get his book published. That's just the tip of the iceberg of the things we're going to talk about, and I guarantee that you're going to learn about a new tool or strategy to just make life a little bit easier by the end of this interview. So let's get the show started and hear from Ari Meisel. Ari, what's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, Scott. Yeah, it's nice to talk to you. Thanks for that intro.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you, man, and because I know that you just have so much awesome information to share. But first, I want to start with the biggest news. You just came out with a new book that talks about a lot of the things that I alluded to in your bio. Why don't we take a minute real quick and tell everyone about your new book that just came out?
Yeah, thanks a lot. So the book is called Less Doing, More Living, How to Make Everything in Life Easier. And that's really how I look at it. You know, it's sort of a culmination of, I guess 4 or 5 years of work now to create this system of productivity that starts with tracking and goes through creating an external brain, which is how I deal with sort of offloading everything on your mind, customization, finances, organization, and ending with wellness. So it's really a very well-rounded approach that I'd like to think almost anybody can use to be more effective in their life.
Now, when you say make your life easier, does that mean more time? Does that mean I have to deal with less stress? What are when you say make your life easier, what exactly is that referring to?
Well, for me, the purpose or the sort of genesis of the system was because of this health crisis. And I realized that stress was such a big component of what was going on with my illness in terms of inflammation and my life in general that I wanted to figure out a systematic way of dealing with the stress. And that's how I came up with the idea of creating a system of productivity, with the idea of freeing up as much time as possible so that people could reclaim their minds, do the things they wanted to do, and stress less.
Yeah, I don't think I know a person in the world that doesn't want more free time. So let's talk a little bit about this framework without getting too into the nitty-gritty, because I want to make sure that people go out and check out the book. But somebody comes to you, and I know you work with everybody from high-performance individuals to companies, and they say, Ari, I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed, I want more free time, I want things to just work easier in my life. Where is the first place that you have people start?
Well, so that's a very good way to ask me, by the way, because that's the thing that I hear every day, multiple times a day, is I'm overwhelmed. Ari, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm just overwhelmed. It's like I'm an anti-overwhelmer. That's what I feel like I've become. It's just the word that comes up all the time. And you have to look at why that is. Why are people overwhelmed? And the truth is, on a very basic level, we have not evolved biologically as quickly as we have technologically, and we simply cannot keep up with everything that's going on in our lives. It's just not possible. And the very first step is realizing that. That's the first thing. So people have this fear of missing out. I think it's actually been acronymized as, FOMA, the fear of missing out. And that's like, you have to know everything. You have to be able to talk to everybody. You have to get back to every Facebook message and every email and all this stuff. And it's exactly that. It's overwhelming. So the biggest thing is that as a result of all of that stuff happening and all those inputs all the time, we lose self-awareness. And that's really where I start. And there's a number of sort of avenues to get there, but basically that lack of self-awareness is at the heart of so many of the problems that people have now. I find, at least, that's a really common issue. So, for example, and I know, Scott, you've seen me talk in person, but I always ask this question, I say to people, look, raise your hands really quick if you can tell me what you had for breakfast this morning. And, most of the time, most of the people raise their hands. I mean, every now and then there's a couple people who don't remember or whatever. But then I say, okay, now tell me how many emails you sent last Tuesday. And in the, multiple thousands of people that I've spoken in the past couple of years, 2 people were able to answer the question. So the first is, does that matter? People say, well, why do I care? And my response is, well, maybe you don't. But the thing is that it's very easy nowadays to track this kind of information without having to make any effort at all. So why not do it? Because you may learn something about yourself. We have this problem where we have these sort of 2 systems in our brain. And I'm trying to remember the psychiatrist. Daniel Kahneman wrote about this. We have the system 1, which is our lazy brain, which really just wants to shortcut everything, use as little energy as possible, and just do it the way it's been done before. And that's what are called heuristics. We have these pathways that have been burned in our brains to do things. And that's how you pay a bill. That's how you write an email. That's how you make a meal. Like, you just get these grooves, and people end up sort of watching their lives rather than living them. So the very first step there's a lot of tracking involved usually with people and trying to identify patterns that they have going on. And then we look at the processes that they are aware that they're going through. And again, paying a bill is a good one. If you tell someone to pay a bill, they don't know how you do it. And odds are you don't know how you do it. You just do it. But if you actually stop and write it down step by step, you might be really fascinated to find that there's a lot of space where you can optimize, automate, and outsource that process.
So the first step is self-awareness. And when you have self-awareness, then you can figure out how to create a more efficient, less cumbersome process that takes up less time.
Right. I mean, just think about it. If you know how certain food makes you feel 4 hours later, that's really helpful information. If you know that when it's 9 o'clock at night, that's the best time for you to be writing creatively. Or if you know that if you work out at 3 in the afternoon versus 7 in the morning, you're going to get better results. Like, that's all self-awareness.
That makes a lot of sense. So what are, because I know that nowadays it seems literally every single day there's a new company or app coming out where I can track something, where I feel like I could literally track my whole life and every single component, and then that becomes a huge problem. So what are some key kind of 80-20 areas where people maybe are spending too much time or are not tracking that they can get some quick wins if they wanted to get started with this?
So, well, the first thing to realize is that most of this stuff is temporary, honestly, because once you do a lot of that hardcore tracking and you regain a lot of that self-awareness, and then the second part of less doing is what I call creating an external brain, which is where you're offloading the stuff on your mind so you have a clear head. Once you do a lot of that stuff, I don't really track much anymore, honestly. The only tracking I do now is when someone sends me a device to try out, which I definitely geek out on, and I love that. But for the most part, you're doing it, for a month or 2 months or 3 months, or maybe even less, just to sort of begin to get that awareness so that you know what's going on in your life. And once you do that, then you can sort of drop things off. So one of the big ones is blood. That's something that people should be doing. Blood testing is something that most people do at their doctor's office, and then they forget about it. And they never even look at the results. And I know that sounds like a weird one to start with, but honestly, you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck from a blood test, because I'll tell you something. I guarantee you that if you're telling me you're overwhelmed, your hormones are probably out of balance. Your inflammation is probably a little bit more than it should be because you're stressed. Your vitamin D levels probably suck because you're wearing clothes and sitting inside and not getting enough sun exposure. So like that's a really good place to start, and it's immediately actionable. It's not like you have to wait for several weeks of tracking. But another one that I really love is rescue time. And I know that you know rescue time, but so, with rescue time, you're basically tracking how you're actively using your computer. And the truth is there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, honestly, there's nothing wrong if you are at a computer 8 hours a day. That's not the problem. If you're using your computer 8 hours a day and you're standing at your desk, or you're taking a break every half an hour to do some squats or take a walk, and you're still eating healthy, like that, it's not bad necessarily to be in front of the computer. And the truth is that a lot of things that we do nowadays can be done digitally or can be done that way. So rescue time will tell you how you're spending that time. And after a week, it's going to start to tell you Tuesday's your most productive day. Thursday's your least productive day. And you can really start to act on that information. It's very cool stuff. So sorry, that's sort of a roundabout way of answering that. But basically, I would say blood, the way you use your computer, and sleep tracking, I think, would be probably the most bang for the buck.
Great. I appreciate that. So I have a question about blood, because I've gotten a lot of blood tests, and I get the sheet printed out with a bunch of numbers. I have no idea what any of them mean. It's not really directive in terms of how I can actually take action on this information to feel better, to notice any deficiencies. Is there a particular service that I would go and take that to? Do I ask my doctor how I could optimize my diet or exercise or whatever regimen to improve levels that might be off balance? What do I actually do once I get the blood test?
So it's a great question. So there's two sides of it. One, there's actually a ton of really great doctors nowadays that do a lot of virtual consulting, and they can, you can share your results with them. They'll get on Skype with you and they'll talk you through it. There's a natural doctor that I work with in New York named Scott Jerica who does that, and he's great. But I'm an advisor to a company called Untitled Chapter. And it's similar to Wellness FX, which a lot of people have heard of. They I think one is more West Coast, one is more East Coast. And what they do is you can either go to a LabCorp lab, or they'll send someone to your house to take your blood. And then you get a really nicely graphically designed dashboard that they've created, which I love. It does two things. One, it'll show you your results over time. So if you get tested every 3 months, every 6 months, whatever you want, it'll show you how you've changed, and it'll, literally like bring you in the green or bring, in the red. And then it'll recommend specific foods for your issue. Mm-hmm. So that's a really, really good way to do that. And I like that because, first of all, typically if you go to the doctor and you don't have a specific problem necessarily, they're going to run a CBC panel. Basically, they're going to do a very basic panel. They're not going to necessarily test your vitamin D. They're not going to test your creatine kinase or your C-reactive protein, which are inflammatory markers. So with this one, you can do that, and it really is about optimizing performance.
That's excellent, and that's all pretty easy to do. I just literally go onto the website of Inside Tracker or Wellness FX and set up an appointment.
Order it up, yeah. And actually now, at least Inside Tracker has some home kits where you can prick your finger and do it yourself and mail it in. But it's only for like 6 markers or so, but it's still useful. And one of the things I love about that, I think it'll let you test. It'll definitely let you test cholesterol. I think it'll let you test liver function, so AST, and a couple other things. What I like about that is that you can use that before and after a meal. You can use it before and after a really heavy exercise session, so you can actually get some very real-time results about how the things you do affect your body. And for example, I've seen this a number of times where creatine kinase is a inflammatory marker. It's basically muscle tissue breaking down, and it happens when you work out, and your body's supposed to flush it. I've had a couple clients, not on purpose, but they ended up getting their blood tested right after doing a CrossFit workout, and their creatine kinase were like literally thousands of levels higher than they should be. And then they settled right back down the next day. So it's interesting when you can do that kind of immediate testing.
Absolutely. Now, I understand I've used services like Rescue Time that tell me that, Scott, you're spending too much time on social media, on Facebook, or maybe you're checking email instead of doing things that are actually important. And that information is great. It makes me, because again, like you said, it makes me aware. But that still doesn't help me with the problem of, on a regular basis, taking the actions that I know I should to make my life better and to basically be more efficient and achieve more. Is there Is that a problem that you help people with? Is there any particular strategies for people out there that are aware of something they need to change but have difficulty actually making it a habit?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, first of all, I actually coach a lot of people, and that sort of serves as the accountability in many cases. But generally what I find is that if you make it as easy as possible for someone to make that change, that's usually the best way. And, for example, I'm a big fan of micro goals. So somebody tells me that they want to lose 50 pounds. That's a terrible goal, and they're going to fail. I promise that person will fail. If somebody says they want to lose a pound a week, which, that's on the low end if you really want to get after it, that's a better goal, because that's something where you can really see what's happening day to day, week to week. And you don't have to have this like long-term goal that you can't even see, much less figure out a path to get to. The thing about micro goals that's so great is that each one, even though you've made it minuscule, and a perfect example is reading a book, right? So you could make a micro goal, finish this page. I just want to finish this page. And that, reading a book for pleasure, I don't know about you, Scott, but a lot of people that I deal with, and me personally, it's difficult. It's really hard to get in that mindset to like just chill out and read a book. So if you say like, okay, I'm just going to get through one page, even though that's not a big deal to read a page, you've set that as your goal. So you've created a little bit of a success. And then you're motivated to get like, okay, I'll do another page, and then I'll do another page. And then you've had like 5 micro successes. And it really works that way on a psychological level.
So you have to kind of chunk down the goals so it's easy to succeed, and that'll spur the motivation.
Exactly.
That's great. That's really, really great. Is there a particular like step process that you tell people to, is it just that simple? Or is there a particular thing where you have people write out, this is what I want to achieve in the big picture, let's break this down by week, let's break this down by day, and I'm going to track it using X. Is there kind of a cohesive framework that all fits into?
Yes, there is, but it also is kind of specific to the situation. So, for instance, there are certain ones where you can lay it out like the first thing you said, where you have like a whole schedule, meaning like, I have to write a book. Okay. I have to write this book, and I have to, if I'm going to write the book by this date, then I have to write 10 pages every week to get there. And, you can back it out that way, and that's okay. And that works really well. But sometimes I do take the GTD approach, the getting things done approach, where it's what is the next step? And that's all I care about. So you look at a bunch of things, then you say, what is the very next thing I can do? So for instance, if I have to write a book, okay, do I have to do any research? No? Yes? Like if I do, then okay, so how am I going to do that research? Then, okay, that when I'm ready to do it, that's the first thing I'm going to do. The tracking is another one, though, that is really helpful. Like, for instance, I don't know if you know this, but statins, which are the, like Lipitor, Crestor, the cholesterol-lowering drugs, one of the side effects is memory loss, which is really sad. And it has some other things, too, but it'll cause some memory loss. So I had a client who went off her Lipitor, and then we were doing Lumosity brain training every week to test her memory. And literally within a month, her memory improved by 40%. So that's the kind of situation where it's like, yeah, this is really great to see that result. And that definitely makes you want to keep going on the path.
Yeah, it's just really amazing when you bring up examples like this. It makes me think about how many different things I'm just not tracking, so I'm not aware of it, and thus like I'm probably not operating at the highest level that I could be. Is there any particular things that people you see without fail that people are not tracking that they probably should be outside of their blood?
I think that as easy as it is now, and as many devices and things that there are, a lot of people really don't track their sleep. And the problem with that is that, well, forget the problem. It's just that a lot of people don't track their sleep, and sleep is so important. And I know that you're a big sleep hacking guy. So not being able to track your sleep is a big one. And a lot of people, if you ask, they did it for like a week, and then they kind of got bored. They didn't want to wear the device. They didn't want to have a wristband. They didn't want to have a headband, whatever it was. But the truth is you get some very, very valuable information out of that. And if you want to take it to kind of another level, someone like me who I've got it pretty dialed in now, honestly, but it's still valuable for me to track my sleep, which I do on occasion. It's a check-in, because even if you become self-aware and you're like, okay, now I get this, at the same time, you can come into that situation where you're back into your heuristics, and it's like, okay, now, the process can always be improved. And what works for you today doesn't necessarily work for you in 6 months, whether it's a sleep plan or a diet or anything. So for me, if I were to see on my sleep tracker that I did poorly last night for some reason, and I didn't feel like that necessarily, but I was poor in my sleep, then there'd probably be some supplements that I'd want to take this morning to mitigate some of those effects.
Right. And the value of, in terms of energy and feeling good and operating at your highest level, just the value of a good night's sleep is absolutely critical. So again, this whole idea of just bringing awareness to, what particular things, inputs in your body are affecting that performance is absolutely huge. All right, I want to switch gears just for a second here, because I know in addition to a lot of this tracking stuff, you're also an expert at outsourcing and delegating things that you don't need to be doing. Can you talk a little bit about some of the main tools and things that you help people basically get started on this whole path of having people do the things that they shouldn't be in their life and business?
Absolutely. So, the overarching framework for less doing is to optimize, automate, and outsource. And it's really in that order. It's very important, because outsourcing an inefficient task does not make it more efficient. So first you start to optimize, and that's really what we've just been talking about identifying the processes, looking at where the inefficiencies are and trying to correct. The second step is automation. So before we get to outsourcing, I like to look at sites, things, processes, people, software, whatever it is, but it's in the vein of set it and forget it. So my favorite things for that is Ifttt and Zapier, which are both websites that they're identical for the most part, but Ifttt is completely free, and Zapier you have to pay for, but Zapier is much more expansive and works with a lot more different apps, and also lets you get a lot more detail. So for those who aren't familiar with it, very simply, it's like programming for someone who has no idea how to program, which I would fall into that boat. So you set up a trigger, and then that causes an action, and that is it. And what is that trigger? That trigger could be you liked a video on YouTube. That trigger could be somebody subscribed to your MailChimp mailing list. The trigger might be that somebody mentioned you on Twitter. And then the action could be anything. The action could be somebody mentioned you on Twitter, add that person's name to a new favorite list on Twitter. Or somebody signed up for your mailing list on MailChimp, send them an immediate email thanking them and offering them to sell something, or, whatever it might be. So I have, on a daily basis, about 110 different processes running. And this is everything from how my podcasts get edited and put up on my blog, to how they get shared on social media, to even assigning things automatically to virtual assistants. So virtual assistants are the next part of it. And I believe that everybody should work with a virtual assistant at some point in their life, because it is an educational process for you in terms of how you effectively communicate and delegate anything. And if you have to deal with somebody who you don't know, you don't see them, you're not going to have a real relationship with them necessarily, that's a really interesting parameter to put on you when you're assigning work. And the truth is that if you're dealing with somebody who is competent and they mess up, 9 times out of 10, it's your fault, because you didn't effectively give them that information. So for the virtual assistants, I love Fancy Hands and Zirtual. And the difference between those two is Zirtual is a dedicated assistant, so you're always going to be dealing with the same person. Every time you call or email, the same person is going to deal with you. They're going to have access to your email if you want. They can learn the way that you like to do certain things. Fancy Hands, on the other end, is an on-demand service, and that's where you're sending your task to a pool of thousands, in this case, assistants, and any one of them will pick it up, do it, and move on. They still work through a central repository. They can see your calendar. They can buy things, but you're never dealing with the same person. I love both for different things, but personally, I only have a on-demand assistant at this point because of the amount of volume that I do.
Sure. And what's some of the popular things for people that have never worked with a virtual assistant before? What are some of the tasks that you have these people help you with?
Well, so again, for me, it's all podcast editing, the transcriptions of the podcasting, putting the podcast up on WordPress, anything. Dealing with, I manage several rental properties because I'm also a real estate developer. All of the rent check processing, that's done by virtual assistants. Research for the most part, a lot of personal stuff too. I mean, if you're saving time on anything, then you're saving time as far as I'm concerned. And for people who want to just try this out, I love this thing. There's a service called Talk To. You know Talk To, Scott?
I've heard of it, but could you tell us a little bit more about it?
So Talk To is not a virtual assistant service, and I've kind of gotten into this habit of using things for things that they're not intended. But so with Talk To, you can text any business in the country and get a text response. So how is that like a virtual assistant? Well, first of all, it's really convenient to be able to send a text rather than having to get on the phone if you want to make a dentist appointment or a dinner reservation or see if a store has something in stock. It's really nice to just be able to send a text and then they do it. And yes, you're technically, in a way, texting with the business, but the truth is that a Talk To agent is actually calling the business and then responding to you as if they were the business. And they're very transparent about it, but it makes it very seamless. But if you really want to experience one of the glories of having a virtual assistant, 9 o'clock at night is my time when I tend to unload a lot of tasks. And let's say at 9 o'clock at night, I realize that I really need to get a dental cleaning for some reason. So I can send a task to my fancy hand, for instance, and say, look, call the dentist and make me an appointment for the cleaning. By that same token, you can use Talk To completely for free to try this out. And you're going to see some lightness happen. So basically, send the text to your dentist through Talk To and say, I need to schedule a dental cleaning. Now, they don't open for the next 12 hours, most likely. So the Talk To agent's going to write back and say, we'll get back to you as soon as we're open. And what that means is that for the next 12 hours, even though you're going to be asleep for a lot of that task is done. You are done, and that is off your mind. And you have officially delegated a task that you don't have to worry about for the next 12 hours, and that is a beautiful thing.
That is a beautiful thing. That is so if somebody was interested in maybe giving this a shot, they know they want to be working with virtual assistants, don't know where to start, you would recommend trying this Talk To?
Absolutely. Make a dinner reservation, make a dentist appointment, see if a store has something in stock. Like, that's simple. You'll see the power of not having to deal with something that mundane by yourself.
Love it. Now, again, I want to switch gears and actually have you tell a story real quick, because I think we were having a coffee in New York before I left for Brazil, and you told me about how you actually got the book deal for Less Doing. And I've heard a lot of different guys talk about this, but I've never heard a story that was as unique as yours, and almost, it seemed in some ways the way that you had a lot of this book done is in total alignment with the whole theory of less doing, and that it just took you much less time. So could you talk a little bit about that and tell that story?
Yeah, so the only time that I've had outsourcing really go badly for me was when I tried to have ghostwriters work on writing stuff for me. And again, I said this before, I honestly believe that if a competent outsource provider does a poor job, it is your fault as the assigner because you weren't clear about what you wanted. So, unless of course there's some malice there, but basically I had wanted to write the book. I had written the book basically years ago, even before I had really formed all the ideas, which was silly in retrospect, but now it's all come together. So the first two times I tried to have somebody put together an ebook version of what is now the real book, I sent them like 7 or 9 or 8 blog posts and an interview I'd done and a podcast, and I basically was like, hey, take all this stuff and make it into something that sort of flows well. And the first time what I got back was like basically a cut and paste of what I'd sent them. And the second person, just what they wrote just didn't sound good. It was really terrible. And I was really disappointed. But it's really about finding the method, and I love, there's an Einstein quote that I love. And it's basically like, if you try to teach a fish to climb a ladder, you're always going to think it's an idiot. So basically, so I created this online course with a lot of video of me talking in the way that I naturally speak and the way I naturally present, the way that I really wanted the material to come out. And I said to a new person, I said, take my course and then write an ebook based on that. And what I got back was perfect. The woman absolutely nailed it, and she was amazing. And then I was able to use that, which, in a way, it was a transcription of what I said, but it was just put together in a nice way, and the questions were removed, and it flowed better. And that basically served as my outline for the real book.
Love that. So you just basically cut that whole process, cut the time on that outline process, I don't know, in a tenth of the time. But just having somebody give you this amazing draft to start with by outsourcing giving them something to work with, and then, kind of doing some of the heavy lifting. That's awesome.
Yeah. And what's so funny about that is when I met the guy who became my editor, he was like, well, when do you think you can have the manuscript done? I was like, I'll email it to you before we leave this meeting. It was done. And on that same note, I've already emailed them. I've already given him the manuscript for the next book.
Love it. And is there any chance we could get a sneak peek of what that might be?
Sure. No, it's going to be my basically my Gmail, IFTTT, and virtual assistant course, but it's going to be a much more specific kind of guide to how you conquer email, how you automate your life, and how you deal with virtual assistants.
Love it. I think no one can ever get enough good information on how to do all those things, because it just seems like no matter what we do, there's more email, there's more tasks, there's more things that somebody else could be doing for me. So I'm personally really fired up about that book too.
Thank you very much, man.
So, all right, there's been so much amazing information in this talk that people can use to get an edge in their business and life. But I always like to finish with one question at the end. And that is, if there was one thing that maybe we haven't talked about yet, maybe we have and you just want to highlight it, that you could tell people that they could do to get an edge in their business and life, what would it be?
Start writing down every single idea that you have without questioning it, without hesitating, and without even thinking about it. If you have an idea, get it out of your head. And I recommend Evernote, but you can use a notebook if you want, but get those ideas out of your head. If you want to refer to them later, you can. If you don't, that's fine. Just create idea flow.
And why is this such a powerful practice?
Because again, we don't use our brains for the things that we should be using them for. And the brain is really good for coming up with ideas, but it's really bad at holding on to them. And in that case, it's even worse at executing them.
So the idea is to really create space by logging these in that external brain, so you can focus on what's important, like new ideas, instead of focusing on having to remember something.
Exactly. I have this very ideological view that everybody has some genius in them to offer the world, everybody without fail. And for the most part, if they're not sharing it with the world, it's because they're getting in their own way. And that's just the nature of the beast. So you have to clear your mind to allow that to happen.
Where do you write all your ideas down?
I'm a huge Evernote guy.
Evernote. You have that app on your phone?
I have the Evernote app on the phone. I have, and then I use the web version on the computer.
Amazing. Well, that's we'll make sure to link all that, and the show notes up. We'll make sure to link Evernote as well as all the other amazing tools that you've mentioned in this interview in the show notes. And if people want to find out more of this type of information, if they want to get the book, where's the best place for them to go?
So the main website is lessdoing.com. That's where everything is. If you just want to remember one thing, lessdoing.com. That's where my book is, the podcast, the articles, everything, the blog. But if you go to lessdoingbook.com, then I have a special page where I have some really cool offers for people. If you buy one book or if you buy 10 books, there's some really cool swag that goes along with that.
Well, that is certainly something that I'm going to be running over to after this interview. Thanks again for coming on, man. This has been so amazing. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited right now about going up and optimizing some of the things that I'm currently doing after our talk. And I really just want to thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, man. It's always fun talking to you.
Before we finish up with today's Mindshare, I just want to say thanks for listening to another episode of The Competitive Edge. If you enjoyed the ideas in this episode and want access to all the conversations, tactics, and mind shares we'll be sharing in the future, the best thing you can do is subscribe to The Competitive Edge on iTunes. And while you're there, if you felt like this show has made a positive impact on your day, It'd be great if you could leave us a review on iTunes as well. Now, I know we covered a lot in this episode, and there might be a few key ideas or tools that you want to remember. So we went ahead and compiled all of the notes, links, and even a full searchable transcript of this conversation for you on lifelonglearner.com. That's life-longlearner.com. I also want to give you the details on a cool contest I'm running right now at lifelonglearner.com/fun. By entering the contest, you'll have a chance to win everything from Amazon gift cards to a free month of having your very own dedicated virtual assistant to an opportunity to come and hang out with me and my buds for a few days where we'll teach you how to create your very own passive income stream. To enter this contest and learn more about everything we're giving away, head on over to lifelonglearner.com/fun. Are you a life hacker or do you like life hacking? Then you're going to love our sponsor today, lifehack.io. Lifehack.io is the first community for lifestyle design and life hacking. And on their site, inside, if you choose to join, you will find some of the best classes on different life hacking things. Things like travel hacking and sleep hacking, better managing your Gmail, negotiation, getting a raise. All of this stuff is behind the scenes over at lifehack.io. And they've been kind enough to give away a few memberships to people that are listening to this show. If you head on over to lifelonglearner.com/fun, you can enter into our giveaway to potentially be the recipient of over $500 in life hacking classes and free memberships to lifehack.io. Hey, Scott here, coming at you with another mind share. And I think that I don't know how this will be received, but whatever. The goal of these was to share more inside information. So I have a new intern who's working for me down here in Rio de Janeiro. Actually, some guy that I met in the study abroad program that I joined so that I could stay here because my visa was going to expire. So I had to either get married or become a student and didn't find the love of my life. So decided to become a student. But anyways, I was telling him he's helping me with a lot of my online courses, which is one of my passive income streams. It's been a really fun thing that I work on. And he told me, he's like, dude, I don't have anything that I can teach a course on. Like, I haven't done anything amazing. I just don't have any credibility. Like, I don't have anything I can teach a course on. And my highest selling course is one on sleep hacking. And me and Ari didn't really talk much about this, but like one of the things that I was fascinated by is I was always trying to optimize my sleep for performance, for spending less time in bed, a bunch of other things. But this is like an amazing example of me not having expertise in something, yet being able to create an asset that not only is a product of not only demonstrates something that I enjoy and push me to develop further expertise in the subject, but make a lot of money off of it. Like, I don't have a PhD in sleep. I don't have any special denotation in my title that says I've done anything with sleep. I just was really interested in optimizing my sleep like over the past couple of years and found all the best articles about them and then compiled that along with my own experience into a PowerPoint and then told everybody about it. And that's my course. And this is just like an example of basically how you can go out and just be a curator of information without having a ton of credentials for things that you're really interested in, and then package that into a product and sell it. Like, it's actually a pretty awesome thing to think about, that you can just go pursue your interests, get the best of everything, compile it into one thing, and then, have an asset that makes you money while you're asleep, or that you can give people if you're interested, if they show an interest. It's just like an amazing thing to do. So if you're someone out there and you're like, I want to do a Tim Ferriss Muse business, or I want passive income, or I want whatever, like, pick 5 things that you have like an interest in learning about, go learn as much as you can about them, and then compile the best of that information into some type of digital good and start selling it. It's really not that hard to do and is actually a very rewarding process. So that's today's Mindshare. Hopefully that'll push some of you that might want to get started in this whole online passive income, online business world, whatever you want to call it. It'll push you guys to maybe start thinking about some things you can do. Alrighty, well, I will talk to all of you soon. Thanks again for listening.